This is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Greg Beaufait of Dundee Venture Capital. Greg, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hall, for having me.
Well, great. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into your current position there and more about Dundee?
Yeah, so Dundee's been around since 2010, so going on 8 years now. So we were started by an entrepreneur, Mark Haysbrook, who's still our managing partner. And Mark had two e-commerce companies he was building in Omaha, Nebraska, where we're headquartered. And he raised a bunch of money for both those companies, but all on the coast. So from good investors too, like Sequoia and Insight. But his frustration was, I'm building a really cool business here in Nebraska. No one around me, not just Nebraska, but even going to Chicago, is willing to fund this business at an early stage and not just give me capital, also help me. So that's how Dundee started back in 2010. We're now in our third fund, which is $31 million. And our MO is we lead seed rounds between the coasts. So wherever you are, whether it's Provo, Utah, you're in Pittsburgh, or you're in Austin or Omaha or Toronto, we want to see you and want to invest as early as we can in your company. And I've been with Dundee since 2013, so going on 5 years now, and actually joined in Omaha as an intern right out of school. So we take 2 interns every year from Creighton University. They help us with a bunch of different tasks. And I was one of those, and we were a smaller team, just Mark, Beth, our other partner at the time. And I joined on as we were thinking about raising our third fund in the future. And now we have 3 offices, Omaha, Minneapolis, and Chicago, and I operate our Minneapolis office.
Well, great. So if you fund seed deals, that's great. What do you look for at that early stage that gets companies into your pipeline for serious consideration?
It's all people. It all comes down to the people. So a lot of times a product will shift over time. The market they're attacking is certainly going to change over the 5, 7, 10 years they operate the company. So it really comes down to people. Are these, some of it's gut check. Are these people we think will hustle? Do they have the tenacity to make it happen? A lot of it comes down to their background. Is there a reason they're solving this problem? So everyone's heard of product market fit. We think about founder problem fit a lot and founder market fit a lot. What we like to see, so our portfolio is about 3/4 B2B SaaS and about 1/4 consumer. And especially on the B2B SaaS side, but even on the consumer side, we like to see founders that have been in the industry before. They know the inner workings of that problem. They know what they want to build to solve it. Just shortens the time to actually get a product out there and makes it less likely they're going to make a mistake getting a product out there and the market's not going to accept it because they've been in that market before. So that's what we like to see.
But do the founders have to have run a company before, and in particular a company like the one they're building now, or do you take first founders for these deals?
They don't always have to. I think in the Midwest, especially, there's not that many second, third time tech founders, especially when you go outside major cities like a Chicago and Austin where there are folks like that. So a majority of our companies are first time founders, but they're people who have been in the industry in various capacities. And often what we're seeing now is these cities in the Midwest grow and there's more startup activity. Someone that was a CTO or someone that was an early employee at a startup, a fast growing startup, is now leaving and starting their own company. And we're super excited to back that as well. They don't have to be second or third time entrepreneurs.
Well, I know you spend a lot of time helping the companies get up and running and growing and so forth, but in general, what do you end up spending most of your time on in the first 1 or 2 years after the fundraise? What do you find the most common element of work you find yourself engaged in with these startups?
So we're active investors. So we're typically on the board, although not always. We're leading most of the deals we do. So a lot of what we do is work directly with the companies on their fundraising strategy for sure. Where's that next round of capital coming from? Where do you have to get to reach a successful Series A fundraise? So we think about our lane as seed to A all day long. How do we get you from a seed round to going out and raising a successful Series A? And what that entails is a lot of different things, and it varies depending on the company. Some of them we can't be helpful in the industry they're working in because we're generalists and the founders almost always know that industry better than we do. What we can be helpful with is strategy. Are you thinking big enough about your company? Are you asking the right questions? Are you hiring the right members on your team? Because team is everything at the early stage. If you think about, you've got a 5-employee organization, every single employee is 20% of that company. So it's critical to get those hires right. So those are the things we spend a lot of time on working with our companies.
We spend a lot of time talking about product market fit with founders, but you brought up a new element there, product founder fit. Can you talk more about what that is and how that works?
Yeah, so what we look at and what we like to see in founders is there's a reason they're solving this problem, and they felt this problem viscerally themselves. And frankly, if someone else had figured it out before and put that solution out in the market, they'd probably use it and not be starting this company today. But it was just something that nagged at them for 4, 5, 6, 7 years as they were in their career. And they said, man, no one's solving this problem. There's a huge opportunity here. I know what I need to build. I know who the customers are. I know what the end outcome is going to be. And I'm just going to go out and build that myself. So we see that a lot of times, especially on the B2B side.
And so you do a lot with B2B and B2B SaaS and so forth. And you think about expanding out into other areas. And if so, what do you think about those?
So we're generalists. So we'll touch just about anything. There's a few things we won't do, which is anything that requires, in our mind, millions of dollars or regulatory hurdles to get off the ground. So we won't do bio, we won't do pharmaceuticals, and we don't really do devices either, any hardware products, but otherwise we'll look at anything else. So we're eager to do consumer deals. Mark, our managing partner, his background is in e-commerce. So we've done plenty of e-commerce as well. So we'll look at anything exciting where we think the opportunity is massive and the vision of the team gets us to stand up off our desk.
Well, there's a lot of new technologies coming up on the scene or have been up there for a while, such as artificial intelligence, data analytics, blockchain. Of those or others, which ones do you think have the longest legs for actually creating new businesses and new jobs?
I think there are a lot of buzzwords, right? I think the cycles ebb and flow. Blockchain's certainly hot right now, but I think what you've seen is a lot of the banks rush to say, hey, we're rolling out a blockchain solution. And 18 months later, they roll it back and say, actually, that wasn't the best technology for what we actually wanted to do. I think you see that across every spectrum. Voice, you saw it with 3D printers, certainly. We see it with AI. We saw it with big data. I think when you think about AI and machine learning, those are just going to be core components of every single business going forward. Everyone is going to have to take the data they ingest and make better algorithms out of it, make better business decisions out of it. The question is, do you actually have a unique data set that you're collecting or ingesting or creating that you can then stick the AI or the machine learning algorithm on to create better business on the back end? So we think of it more about like, what's your unique value prop as a company? It's usually not an AI or machine learning core competency. You actually have to have a unique data set. So we focus more on like, what problem are you solving as a business, and less on, is it blockchain? Is it AI? Just because we can't predict where those industries are going in the next 3, 5, 7 years.
Well, it's true of most technologies that they go through a hype cycle where they get overblown. And then, of course, these things take longer than 3, 6 months to roll out. It takes many years before all the infrastructure is in place and it can really gain some long-term legs. And it's always interesting to hear where people might think the long-term solutions might be versus the short-term solutions, because everything looks good in the first 6 months, but after that, the reality sets in. So I was just curious as to where you thought the next big companies might come from and which sector. Of course, they will all produce something, if sure, but just wanted to see what your thoughts were there.
Yeah, I think the thing that's most interesting about blockchain and the cryptocurrency movement, and we've looked at many companies in the space, we haven't actually invested in any yet. I think what's most interesting about kind of the core technologies, the decentralization aspect of it all. If you look at our computing and our mobile lives today, it's all the big companies. It's Apple, it's Facebook. You've seen what's happened with Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Everyone's saying, oh, wow, like Facebook controls all this data about me. I didn't know it. And Google controls the same thing. So I think you see the big tech companies controlling so much of our lives, and it's the same for government centralization as well. So I think the core thesis around blockchain and cryptocurrency in general, the decentralization aspect of it and the peer-to-peer aspect of it, I think there's going to be some really, really, really interesting companies built on the back of it, because it's just a better way of doing business in a lot of industries, not all industries, but in many industries. So that gets us super excited.
Well, and of course, ICOs are coming up, and there's a lot of mania and hysteria that goes around tokens and those type of things. And I think 40% of all ICOs of 2017 are already dead. So we know there's a lot of scams in the space, and I think the SEC is doing its best to stamp that out. they'll have that fixed here pretty soon. But in general, what do you think of token-based solutions?
We think a lot of them there's no reason they're actually doing an ICO besides it's being easy money. So I think there's going to be a lot of regulatory risk for a lot of those companies. The SEC, as you said, is cracking down on a lot of it. And I think that's only going to continue. And when we think about blockchain, we think about ICOs, like there has to be a reason you're actually becoming a blockchain company or you're doing an ICO beyond just it being easy money or it being the cool thing to do. So that's our concern when we look at the ICOs. And then the valuation is just totally out of the whack on almost all of them with traditional venture funding life cycles. And we don't know what the ICO market's going to look like 18 months down the road or 36 months down the road when you have to go out and raise your next round of capital. So we've totally stayed on the sidelines on all of that. It makes you feel a little bit stupid when you see the success of some of the ICOs, but I just think we're at this crazy point in the market, both in terms of a very long bull run and in terms of a lot of people having made a lot of money in cryptocurrency in a short amount of time and putting it back into ICOs, that I think when the tide goes out, the quote is, right, you're going to see who's been swimming naked. And I think we'll see that in a couple of years.
And so to shift gears for a second, the venture capital market seemed like it's undergoing quite a few changes as well in light of ICOs, in light of technology, in light of data analytics and other elements. What do you see as the future of the venture capital model? Where do you think it's going?
I think it's a really good question. I think there's a lot of pressure on like the traditional 2 and 20, 2% management fee and 20% carry model that venture funds and private equity funds employ. What that actually means down the road, is it always going to be 2 and 20? Is it going to be more of an AngelList model where you're doing deal by deal? I'm not sure. What I think is always going to be out there is there's going to be smart groups of people that professionalize investing in startups. I think there's a lot of value in having a professional fund investing in you, both in terms of connections, in terms of them thinking about your business every waking moment, in terms of them seeing 10, 20, 30 other businesses in your sector and being able to give you some pattern recognition as an entrepreneur. So I don't think professional venture funding is ever going to go away, but I do think there's going to be some pressure on kind of the fund model, especially if you look at what we've seen in the last couple of years. There's been a bunch of new mega funds, and there's been funds raising every 2 years. Traditionally, that was more like every 3 to 4 years. So I think seeing the shakeout of that will be interesting. But the thing with the venture world, right, is you don't see that shakeout for 7 or 10 years. So there's a lot of easy money to be made now in terms of raising a big fund, deploying capital, collecting management fees. But what are the returns going to look like in 7 to 10 years? That's what we're most interested in seeing.
For a while, we had a lot of discussion around using data analytics, and the answer would be in the data, and we just apply analytics. And so there's the answer of who we fund and so forth. And I think there's some elements of truth in that, but there's also limits into that. What do you think we'll get out of data analytics for the VC process?
I think there's some really cool things happening in that space. Like you look at what social capital is doing with their capital as a service, kind of democratizing access to capital, I think is a huge thing. Correlation Ventures has done a really, really great job. Where we as a seed fund have struggled is we'll go as early as pre-product, pre-revenue. So how do you impose data on a company like that, right? How do you have a model in place to say like, okay, I'm going to take this pre-product, pre-company revenue and evaluate it? That's been tough for us. So I think there's going to be some really cool things at like the Series A and later stage, like social capital, like Correlation. I think there'll be more and more of that and less kind of people as gatekeepers, more data and actually show me the money and show me your real product traction and usage as gatekeepers. And I think that's only a good thing as venture becomes less of a, you went to Stanford, I'm going to fund you for $5 million type game.
Sure. Well, that's very helpful information. In the last couple of minutes we have here, what should we talk about that we didn't cover already?
Well, we've got to beat the drum of the rise of the rest. We invest strictly outside the coast, which has a lot of positives to us. I think there's back to Mark's founding story of why you started Dundee, the cost to start a company have come down dramatically. And I think you've seen access to capital get democratized a little bit. And certainly access to just starting a company has become easier and easier. So we're seeing more and more super exciting companies everywhere we look in almost every major metro between the coasts. And you're seeing funds like Rise the Rest start to invest here. Greycroft has done a ton of really great investing in the Midwest and in the middle third of the country. So we think it's the biggest opportunity in venture right now and are really excited about it.
Right. There's a lot of great companies in the Midwest that don't get as much attention as they do on the coast. So it's an opportunity to go pick up some great companies, and often valuations seem to be a little bit more reasonable in this part of the world than on the East Coast or West Coast. So you find people getting really excited when they see what's there from time to time. So I think that's a good point as well. So what's the best way for people to get back in touch with you?
So we welcome hearing from everyone, your listeners in Texas and otherwise. We've done 3 deals in Austin over the years, so it's certainly in our geography. So the best way to get in touch with me is just via email. It's greg@dundeevc.com, and I'll respond to any listener that listens to this and wants to get in touch.
Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate you taking time to join us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Hall.
Thank you.